A worthy cause.
When Animaniacs first aired on television in 1993, it subverted a lot of conventions. It left no stone unturned in making a kids' cartoon show that equally appealed to adults as well. It had numerous pop culture references, sharp satire, and catchy musical numbers. I mean, how many times have you seen a kids' cartoon reference the Coen Brothers or Quentin Tarantino? I mean, even for 2026, it's still kind of revolutionary, right? Among several kids' shows from the era in which it was released, Animaniacs proved to be an exception by refusing to play it safe as it had its own unique voice. It took risks boldly and courageously, and that's why in this video we're going to be talking about how one of the most offbeat kids' shows of all time ended. So, without wasting any more time, let's jump right into it.
I thought you needed us to be as skeletataries.
Never!
Context: the rise of Animaniacs. Animaniacs wasn't just another cartoon show meant for kids. The fact that it was produced by Steven Spielberg's production company, Amblin Entertainment, in collaboration with Warner Bros. Animation and Warner Bros. Television, clearly proves that it was always bound to be something more substantial and profound than your average run-of-the-mill kids program. After the success of Tiny Toon Adventures, the show's creator, Tom Ruegger, was offered a chance by Steven Spielberg himself to develop another TV series. Inspired by the Marx Brothers, Ruegger came up with the three main characters, Yakko, Wacko, and Dot, who escaped from the Warner Bros. Water Tower after they were locked inside it decades ago for being too zany. He decided to include the iconic Warner Bros. Water Tower into his series when he saw it while he was walking around the studio lot. Throughout the show, the three protagonists would interact with Warner Bros. Studio workers in the show, including Ralph the security guard, Dr. Otto Scratch and Sniff, the WB psychiatrist, and Hello Nurse, who's, a nurse. Other segments of the show were dedicated to characters like Pinky and the Brain, Slappy Squirrel, and the Goodfeathers. Pinky and the Brain were genetically modified lab mice who wanted to take over the world. Slappy Squirrel was an ornery old squirrel looking after her young nephew, and the Goodfeathers were a trio of three Italian-American gangster pigeons inspired by the three main protagonists of one of the most popular gangster films of all time, Goodfellas, directed by Martin Scorsese. Animaniacs doesn't focus too much on plot or characterization. Instead, it's been designed as more of a variety show. Each episode has several short skits that are stitched together, and throughout the show, we frequently get to see musical numbers, pop culture references, and sharp satire. In fact, at times the satire was clearly targeted for adult audiences, and a lot of pop culture references were clearly not meant for kids, as movies like Fargo and Goodfellas were referenced regularly. So why did the makers of the show include pop culture references and the kind of satire that really only resonated with adults, and that too in a show that basically belonged to a kids category? Well, it's because the makers wanted to attract audiences of all ages. Animaniacs had a little something for everyone. For kids, there were musical numbers, colorful animation, and goofy characters. For adults, there were pop culture references and sharp and biting satire, along with cultural commentary. The Warner siblings themselves were inspired by the cartoon characters from the 1930s, like Felix the Cat, Bosco, and Foxy. Spielberg wanted the show to have an original score for each episode. The Animaniacs score was composed by Richard Stone. He composed the main theme song as well as several parodies of Broadway musicals. His score for the Goodfeathers segments was designed in the vein of the musical scores of iconic gangster movies like Goodfellas and The Godfather. The Wheel of Morality segment really took the satirical tone of the show to another level, though. This was meant to take a dig at the FCC's mandate of adding moral lessons to children's programs. It usually came near the end of the episode, and the morals were deliberately nonsensical. In the end of the second episode of the first season, for example, the moral lesson for kids was to blame their failures on their parents if they don't succeed in life. After it aired on television, Animaniacs became the second most popular show for kids ages 2 through 11, behind only the juggernaut that was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Throughout its run, it won 8 Daytime Emmy Awards, and in 2009 it was ranked the 17th greatest animated show of all time by IGN. In 2021, it was ranked the 61st best television series of the 1990s by the Chicago Tribune.
Michelle Pfeiffer. Mel Gibson.
Don Knotts.
The cracks form, controversy, and cost. Considering the content of the show, which was quite unusual for a kids' program, it's not at all surprising that the show itself was involved in several controversies that ultimately led to its cancellation. The first crack was a change in the channel that aired the show. For the first 2 seasons, the show aired on Fox Kids, and then after that in 1995, it shifted to Kids WB, and that significantly changed the trajectory of the show going forward. Animaniacs was extremely successful when it first aired on Fox, and it was immensely popular among college students and adult audiences as well. A lot of pop culture references and innuendos flew above the heads of the kids who were supposed to be the target audience. Fox Kids happily embraced this aspect of the show. They were completely okay with its "I can't believe a show for kids got away with this" reputation, but unfortunately, Kids WB thought about this quite differently. They weren't so enthusiastic about the adult audiences tuning in for the show, as Warner Bros. Specifically pitched this series to its advertisers as targeted for very small children. The executives thought a lot about what to do in this situation. They were stuck, and ultimately, they decided to do nothing. However, in 1996, a new season, which was supposed to have 18 episodes, ended up having only 8, as the move happened through season 3 to 5. And then, soon after, the head writer and producer of the show, Peter Hastings, left Warner Bros., and nobody took his place. New episodes were put together using unproduced scripts for 2 more seasons, and then the show ultimately ended. During a 2016 Reddit AMA, Tom Ruger was asked what ultimately led to the show's cancellation. He said that when WB Kids struck a deal with Pokemon and brought it in at a very low cost, that was the first nail in the coffin of Animaniacs, as it was no longer cost-effective for WB Kids to invest in original programming, and Animaniacs was among its first casualties. Pokemon, as you probably know, would go on to become the biggest media franchise in the world. Besides that, Animaniacs fell victim to the clutches of censorship. The production argued with the censors for 3 months about airing a scene in which a parodied caricature of Elizabeth II sat on a whoopee cushion in the segment Windsor Hassle. There's also a segment in which the Warner siblings are shown tormenting a group of censors, and the censors chose to reject it because they didn't find it funny. This battle with censorship wasn't the exact reason why the show ultimately was canceled, but it definitely sheds light on the kind of show it set out to be: bold, courageous, and no holds barred. Ironically, many of the reasons why Animaniacs became popular would ultimately lead to its cancellation.
We want to make a movie!
You can't make a movie.
We want to make a movie!
The Penultimate Blow. Hooray for North Hollywood, Parts 1 and 2. Hooray for North Hollywood was initially planned as a movie before it ultimately became a set of 2 episodes for the 5th season of the series. It originally aired on January 3rd, 1998, when the show itself was facing troubles from its own production company, Warner Bros. In the beginning of the episode, titled Hooray for North Hollywood Part 1, the Warner siblings have finished a script that's about 800 pages in length. They want to pitch it to Warner Bros. And turn it into a movie, but when they go to pitch it to Thaddeus Plotz, the CEO of Warner, they're rejected, and he throws them out of his office, telling them to find a new producer. And then, in order to find a new producer for their script, they check out a variety newspaper. A catchy musical number follows about the terms people working in the film industry should know about. The musical sequence brilliantly satirized how the film industry actually works, and it also satirized the importance of the variety newspaper for the film industry people living in LA. Through Variety, they learned about a New Year's Eve party with important people in the film industry that was about to happen in Beverly Hills. The Warner siblings hobnob with celebrities at a gala event in order to pitch their script, and there they encounter Plotz, who's quite angry about seeing them. Plotz tries to get a hold of them and starts to chase them, and while they run away, Dot drops the script, which falls inside a meal tray. Eventually, another producer named Pressburg Katzen-Eiserman gets a hold of the script and is quite impressed by it, and decides to make the movie based off of it. Meanwhile, Thaddeus Plotz throws the Warner siblings out of the Warner Bros. Studio lot, and not just that, he even tries to sabotage their hopes of finding a producer for their script. That said, the movie does get made, and it becomes a critical and commercial success, winning a bunch of awards. As a result, the public is furious at Plotz for rejecting the script. The fact that the movie Jam-A-Lot, which was produced by Plotz, bombed at the box office doesn't help things either. Hooray for North Hollywood wins a Schlosser and ends up earning more than every other Warner Bros. Production in the past 5 years. The chairman of the board fires Plots, resulting in him becoming a poor man. Several months later, tired and bored of success, fame, and money, the Warner siblings begin to miss Plots, and they decide to bring him back by buying Warner Bros. Using all the money they earned from Hooray for North Hollywood. On New Year's Eve, we see Plots on the streets, poor, miserable, and begging to run a studio. Eventually, he's welcomed back by the chairman of the board, who tells him that the Warner siblings have bought Warner Bros. And that they want to bring him back as the CEO. Plots is reinstated as the CEO of Warner Bros., and the show moves on. Next, we see people singing a song about New Year's Eve, and later on, it's revealed to be the ending of the Warner siblings' next film, Son of Hooray for North Hollywood. In the end, we see the Warner siblings going back to Plots to pitch their next movie. Unsurprisingly, Hooray for North Hollywood shared some parallels with the events that happened in the real world. It's Animaniacs at its most archetypal, filled with references to famous Hollywood directors and stars like the Coen Brothers, Martin Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino, George Lucas, Tom Cruise, Marlon Brando, and Robert Duvall. Plus, it's got a satirical tone and plenty of catchy musical numbers. Also, it aired in 1998 when WB Kids wanted to kill the show itself, and as it turns out, its satire and premise wasn't too far-fetched at all.
It's time for Animaniacs.
The final episode. Birds on a Wire / The Scoring Session / The Animaniacs Suite. Originally, the finale for Animaniacs was aired as part of an hour-long special that also included the final episode of the spin-off Pinky and the Brain. The final episode of Animaniacs isn't exactly a conclusion to begin with, it's more of a retrospective, consisting of 3 major segments: Birds on a Wire, The Scoring Session, and the Animaniacs Suite. Birds on a Wire begins with the Italian-American gangster pigeons, the Goodfeathers, observing a beautiful sunrise. Pesto comments about enjoying the breeze coming in from the north, and in response, Squid is commenting about enjoying the breeze coming from the west. Pesto gets annoyed at Squid and attacks him. The scoring session begins with Neville Nosenest, who steps in as a substitute for music composer Richard Stone as he leads a scoring session for an episode of Animaniacs with the whole cast as the orchestra. Of course, we get to see the Warner siblings annoying him. In the Animaniacs Suite, Richard Stone performs various themes that were played throughout the entire run of Animaniacs. The performance is accompanied by a 7-minute-long montage of clips from all 99 episodes of the show. It never really had a proper ending or resolution, and it was never meant to be that kind of series. It was always meant to be about irreverent satire, musical numbers, and pop culture references, and that last episode was essentially a tribute to the Animaniacs.
And we're zany to the max. So just sit back and relax.
The uncomfortable truth. An ending that almost wasn't. The Animaniacs Suite wasn't the only ending planned for Animaniacs, as the show had another ending in place, which was basically a feature-length film titled Wacko's Wish. In the movie, all of the Animaniacs characters are relocated to a fairy tale world where they race to find the wishing star that will grant them a wish. Both kids and adults enjoyed the movie in test screenings, but Warner Bros. Still decided to release it direct-to-video as they didn't want to spend huge amounts of money marketing it for a wide theatrical release. It was originally supposed to release in November 1998, the same month in which the Animaniacs Suite was also released, but then it was pushed forward and released on December 21st, 1999. Later on, it was released again on January 25th, 2000 as part of the Warner Bros. 2000 collection. The decision to release it a year later wasn't a creative one, it was an economic one. After the success of Pokemon, WB Kids started importing more anime like Cardcaptors, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Astro Boy, and Mega Man. They didn't have any economic incentive to spend more money and make shows in the US, so instead, they started importing anime from other countries at cheaper prices. This is one of the major reasons why Animaniacs ended.
When we run around the Warner movie lot, they lock us in the tower whenever we get caught.
Behind the scenes, the cast and studio's fate. The Warner siblings, Yakko, Wacko, and Dot, were voiced by Rob Paulsen, Jess Harnell, and Tress MacNeille, respectively. Rob Paulsen also voiced the Warner Bros. Studio psychiatrist, Dr. Otto Scratch-and-Sniff, and Tress MacNeille also voiced Hello Nurse and Marita the Hippo. The Brain and the Pigeon Squid were voiced by Maurice LaMarche. The other two Goodfeathers, Bobby and Pesto, were voiced by John Mariano and Chick Venera. Sherry Stoner voiced Slappy Squirrel, and Slappy Squirrel's nephew, Skippy, was voiced by Tom Ruger's son, Nathan Ruger. Voice director Andrea Romano and Tom Ruger called the voice actors to sit at a table in the Soundcastle studio. They wanted them to develop ideas for the characters they were auditioning for. For the role of Yakko, Rob Paulsen took inspiration from the comedian Groucho Marx, and for the role of Pinky, he took inspiration from Monty Python. Tress MacNeille was approached for the role of Dot because her voice was similar to Babs Bunny. In order to audition for the role of Wacko, Jess Harnell did a younger impression of Ringo Starr, as it was suggested by Andrea Romano. Maurice LaMarche thought that the brain was similar to Orson Welles, and he auditioned for the role with an impression that was 2/3 Orson Welles and 1/3 Vincent Price. He would become Romano's only choice for the character of the brain. Several animation studios around the world animated the show. It was animated at Tokyo Movie Shinsha and Seoul Movie in South Korea, Star Toons in Chicago, Wang Film Productions in Taiwan, Freelance Animators New Zealand, and ACOM in South Korea. WB Kids also produced a spin-off of the show mainly produced through Warner Bros. Animation, Pinky and the Brain, which was also created by Tom Ruger. After that, Ruger would also create another show for Warner Bros. Titled Hysteria, but eventually he would leave the studio in the early 2000s to create his own animation studio. That said, even decades after the end of Animaniacs, Warner Bros. Animation is still one of the major animation studios in the US. Then, in 2020, we saw a revival of Animaniacs on Hulu. It was developed by Wellesley Wild, and it saw the return of Rob Paulsen, Jess Harnell, and Tress MacNeille as the three Warner siblings. We also saw the return of Warner Bros. Collaboration with Steven Spielberg's production company, Amblin Entertainment, decades after the end of the original show. What came next? Animaniacs was involved in several controversies, and it even got in trouble with its production company, Warner Bros., but despite that, it was bound to be a franchise. As mentioned before, the television run was directly followed by Wacko's Wish, a full-length direct-to-video feature film. DC Comics also published a comic book series based on the original series, which ran for 59 issues from 1995 to 2000. Even after the end of the original series, it kept on running for 2 more years. Nickelodeon bought the rights to reruns for $20 million, and it debuted the reruns on that network in mid-2001. The series got new life when it was revived in 2020. Warner Bros. Animation once again collaborated with Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment, and the revival ran for 3 more seasons. The original show never got the opportunity to realize its full potential, possibly due to economic reasons, the apprehensions of Warner Bros., and then Pokémon, but despite the obstacles it faced, it became a cultural phenomenon and a huge and extremely popular media franchise. So much of adult animation today is inspired by a kids' show from the 90s that dared to go beyond the conventions and labels of a show that's just for kids. Animaniacs provides a timeless and valuable lesson in bold, courageous, and innovative storytelling. Its huge success and eventual cancellation expose complications and limitations in how media chooses to operate. It built its brand as a kids' show that didn't shy away from attracting adult audiences through clever satire and references that only they would get. No one anticipated it, it shook the system when it first aired, and it still manages to shock us and compel us to ask the question, how did a kids' show from the 90s get away with all this at that time? Alright folks, this is where I'm signing off. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to see more videos like it. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and we'll see ya in the next one.